Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Jim, I just wanted to follow up on Sarah's question from NPR. She asked you about Ivanka Trump's statement that the press is not the enemy of the people. And she asked you whether or not the press is the enemy of the people. You read off a laundry list of your concerns about the press and things that you feel like are misreported, but you did not say that the press is not the enemy of the people. And I think it would be a good thing if you were to say right here at this briefing that the press, the people who are gathered in this room right now, doing their jobs every day, asking questions of officials like the ones you brought forward earlier, are not the enemy of the people. I think we deserve that.
I think the president has made his position known. I also think it's ironic.
I'm
trying to answer your question.
Okay, well,
I politely waited, and I even called on you despite the fact that you interrupted me while calling on your colleague. I said it's ironic.
Which is why I interrupted.
I'm trying.
But if you finish, if you would not mind letting me have a follow-up, that would be fine. But
it's ironic, Jim, that not only you and the media attack the president for his rhetoric when they frequently lower the level of conversation in this country. Repeatedly, the media resorts to personal attacks without any content other than to incite anger. The media has attacked me personally on a number of occasions, including your own network, said I should be harassed as a life sentence, that I should be choked. ICE officials are not welcomed in their place of worship, and personal information is shared on the internet. When I was hosted by the Correspondents Association, of which almost all of you are members of, you brought a comedian up to attack my appearance and call me a traitor to my own gender. In fact, as far as I know, I'm the first press secretary in the history of the United States that's required Secret Service protection. The media continues to ratchet up the verbal assault against the president and everyone in this administration, and certainly we have a role to play, but the media has a role to play for the discourse in this country as well.
And sir, if you don't mind, if I may follow up, excuse me, you did not say in the course of those remarks that you just made that the press is not the enemy of the people. Are we to take it from what you just said? We all get put through the ringer. We all get put in the meat grinder in this town, and you're no exception. And I'm sorry that that happened to you. I wish that had not happened. But for the sake of this room, the people who are in this room, this democracy, this country, all the people around the world are watching what you're saying, Sarah, and the White House for the United States of America, the President of the United States should not refer to us as the enemy of the people. His own daughter acknowledges that, and all I'm asking you to do, Sarah, is to acknowledge that right now and right here.
I appreciate your passion. I share it. I've addressed this question. I've addressed my personal feelings. I'm here to speak on behalf of the President. He's made his comments clear.
It is Friday, the 3rd of August of 2018, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, folks, because we are all Nighthawks in the diner of life, indeed. The French 77s are all poured, ready to go, so please help yourself. All right. Well, Sarah, I think Sarah just said that, the press is the enemy of the people. Donald Trump said what he said, and he let his feelings be known. Okay, so we got that cleared up. Donald Trump is a traitor. Of course, we've already known that. But Donald Trump is a traitor, and he's using the trope, the old tried and true trope of calling the press the enemy of the people because demagogues do that. All right. Omarosa says that his mental decline was so obvious, and she ought to know. I mean, talking about mental decline. All right. Takes one to know one, as they say. Oh, man, oh, man, oh, man. Do we have a show for you today? Yeah, maybe some stories that slip through the cracks, or maybe some that slapped you right upside the forehead. That's how it goes in today's new a-go-go society. Oh, Trump's, I call it hours in hate, like you and me, our. This is our house. Hours in hate. His rallies are really getting, like, bad. Someone's going to get killed. Heaven forbid, like a non-designated token black person, and it'll be a guy, a black guy, with the new Black Panthers or whatever it is that the guy's holding up that is like a total cult thing. But because he's black, and he wants to be in our rally and he says, go Trump and all that, it's okay. Well, I suppose if you got that one and then you got this QAnon. So I really don't want to figure out how QAnon works. All I know is that it's chum. Whoever QAnon is, it did a test, and chum works on a particular kind of lizard brain in our political spectrum. It works very well, actually. Just trigger it. Tickle it a little bit. Tickle, tickle, tickle. And next thing you know, lock her up. Lock her up. Someone's going to get killed. And I keep hearing, this won't stop until someone gets killed. No, that will only be the beginning of a lot of people getting killed. Let's be clear. We've seen this picture before many times. All right. What else do we have on the menu today? While everyone was obsessed with his Twitter rants, Trump quietly gutted 2 major Obama achievements. As soon as Trump finds out that Obama, wore mostly Clark's shoes, Clark's is going out of business. They'll be made to basically go out of business. He is so spiteful. What happens now if Obama did not wear Clark's shoes? Oops, I hope I haven't started something terrible. But, hey, it's chum. Tickle their lizard brains, next thing you know, all of democracy is destroyed. A new letter from 24 attorneys general calls on the U.S. to end anonymous shell companies. The kind where arms merchants and autocrats can, hide their money. And Trump gets smacked down by the ghost of Justice Antonin Scalia. Fat Tony comes back from the grave, puts Donnie Two Scoops in his place. After the break, we move to the chef's table where, in a flailing attempt to reassure the public about the 2018 election, John Bolton was forced to quote Putin on what Trump said at their Russian summit. No one knows. Dan Coates is probably the enemy of the people for all we know. Deep state. And with apologies to Elon Musk, it is now clear that colonizing Mars is unlikely and a bad idea. Yeah, it's already a dead planet. Why would you want to colonize that? All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. If you look to the right-ish of the page, you'll notice the chat room link. Yes, it's right there. How about you engage? Kelly Lincoln, RoaringGrrl, monitors that quite diligently. Though this weekend she is in New Orleans for Netroots Nation, and she's been live streaming on Facebook, by the way. So check that out. I've been trying to keep up putting links on social media. But go to our Facebook page, Netroots Radio. It's right there, and you'll find the live stream that she has. I believe that what she's put up is still available. I'll have to look into that. But she did keynotes yesterday, and she'll be busy today with all sorts of stuff. So check that out, please. And if you would also, next week we'll have our regular contribute donate buttons properly linked up. And in the meantime, Kelly still needs to be able to eat while she's in New Orleans, and if you're able to throw a few shekels her way, that would be fabulous. And links are provided on my show notes diary on on Daily Co's. Indeed, I'll get to that in just a moment. Let's see. You can follow Netroots Radio on Twitter at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. Thanks, Tom. And Facebook, of course, as I just mentioned. You can follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam, and do check out the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's, where I can be found as well as Justice Putnam. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. I don't know. Just put in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. It'll take you to Cookbook West. And you can follow the show there. And we are also on Facebook as West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. That makes it pretty easy. Listen to the show by podcast by way of iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, YouTube, etc., etc., etc. Did I say Spreaker? Do it on Spreaker, too. That's our primary platform for now. All right. Let's get on with these stories here. Trump really hates, black people in general, of course. Really anybody who's not, white. Let's be clear. But he particularly hates Barack Obama. And for many reasons, and primarily because he's black. And so anything that Barack Obama did has to be dismantled, has to be stopped. I mean, this guy, he's not out to make America great again, okay? He's making it ready for sale to the highest bidder, and right now that's Vlad. In my reporter's opinion, of course. It's only speculation, but I will remind folks, I've been batting 1,000. Not just on these issues. I've been batting 1,000 since, when I speculated as a kid, sure seemed like Nixon was in cahoots with the North Vietnamese at the Paris peace talks, doesn't it? And I was right. Took a while to prove it, but I was right. Tanya Ganova from Raw Story brings us this article. While cable news hashed over Donald Trump's latest Twitter rant, the Trump administration was busy dismantling two key policy achievements of the Obama era. On Wednesday, HHS Secretary Alex Azar announced that the Trump administration will expand access to short-term health insurance plans. Get the young kids out of the system. It'll collapse under its own weight by all those sick old people. Yep. Under Obama, the short-term plans could only be used for 3 months at a time. The restriction, as I just mentioned, was designed to force young, healthy people to go through the exchanges. Letting healthy people opt for short-term plans with very limited benefits means the exchanges will be left with only the elderly and the sick. Why do I have to pay for insurance I don't use? Because you will, eventually. See, you pay now and you get help later. Isn't that neat? Come on, it's an exchange of services. They don't care. Of course, short-term plans don't have to meet the ACA's benefit requirements. They can deny coverage based on pre-existing conditions, don't have to cover any specific set of benefits, and can cap how much they'll pay in a year. On Thursday, the Trump administration also rolled back environmental standards for motor vehicles. Yeah, we're coming for you, California. You think that you're a blue state going against half your, And he's furious. Hair furious. He's wild there. EPA head Andrew Wheeler announced the loosening of greenhouse gas emissions, citing the American public's desire for the policy shift towards vehicles that spew more greenhouse gases. I don't think that's true. Only a small subset of people like to do that. And they fix their trucks up so it spews out all this, like, bad black exhaust. What's that called? Rolling smoke or something? Idiots. They think everybody wants to do that. Isn't that fun? You'll notice that none of them all live next door to the plant, though. All right. Acting Administrator Andrew Wheeler at the EPA said, "We're delivering on President Trump's promise, and we don't ever use the P word here at NetRiz Radio, according to our style manual, except in those conditions or situations where you got like an idiot like Andrew Wheeler. We're delivering on President Trump's promise to the American public that his administration would address and fix the current fuel economy and greenhouse gas emission standards. More realistic standards can save lives while continuing to improve the environment. We value the public's input." Yeah, we do. "As we engage in this process in an open, transparent manner." Yeah. Open, transparent manner. You can't even get documents from them from a FOIA request. Give me a break, Andrew Wheeler. Yeah, we value the public's input, but we don't care about it at all. As the environmental website Oil Price noted, it's actually the motor vehicle lobby that's behind the change. Automakers had accepted the standard set by Obama's EPA, but with Trump in the White House, they seem to have found a way to take advantage of a looser regulatory environment. What's the motor vehicle lobby? Yeah, used car salesmen, which I know quite a lot about since I have a family member that, owned the second largest wholesale auction in Southern California. And I know the people that he would work with. Yikes. Talk about grifters. Oh, my God. No wonder he's got a piss-poor attitude about humanity. Yep, under the Trump administration, automakers and used car dealerships sensed an opportunity, lobbying to roll back the fuel efficiency requirements, but they got a lot more than they bargained for. The Trump administration sought to gut the standards, which sets up a predicament that the auto industry wanted to avoid, a patchwork of regulations across various states. In what appears to be a direct provocation of more progressive states, the EPA is also denying states like California the right to set tougher standards. Michael from Think Progress brings us the next offering here at the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, folks, because we are all Nighthawks in the diner of life. Please do not forget that, especially after I have all these French 77s, made for you. I don't have to remind you that it is the most balanced cocktail in the history of cocktails. Not just in this reporter's opinion. Alrighty. For years, the U.S. has been a global leader in providing anonymous shell companies, allowing arms dealers and autocrats to move their money with minimal oversight. Not now, though, that may be changing. First, The Delaware Secretary of State came forward in June to announce his office's support for ending these anonymity in the world of company formation and demanding information about the beneficial owners setting up companies from coast to coast. You mean you can't get a Delaware LLC anymore? Come on. That's where everybody went to hide their money. I'm not kidding you, from plumbers to professors. And on Thursday, in a move that Transparency Watchdog Global Witness has called unprecedented, some 24 attorneys general from across the country have signed a joint bipartisan letter calling for the end of anonymous shell companies in the U.S. Led by Washington State Attorney General Bob Ferguson. I like that guy. And Colorado Attorney General Cynthia Kaufman, he's the Democrat, she's the Republican. There's your bipartisan. The letter is addressed to the chairman and ranking member of the House Financial Services Committee. I guess it's not going anywhere then, will it? One of the signatories of the letter, in a welcome move, was also Delaware Attorney General Matthew Denn. He's a Democrat. The attorneys general from Nevada and Wyoming. The U.S.'s two other primary hubs for anonymous shell company formation did not sign the letter. Nevada and Wyoming, run by Republicans. American shell companies have played outsized roles in the spread of kleptocratic tools and forces over the past few years, allowing companies to be formed on the cheap without identifying who the ultimate or beneficial owners were. Not only have such companies been used and abused by dictatorships and thuggish rulers in places like Equatorial Guinea and the Ukraine, but they've also been utilized to allegedly move millions by those close to Donald Trump, as the ongoing trial of Trump's former campaign manager Paul Manafort illustrates. Now, Trump, at last check, himself owns nearly 400 business entities in Delaware alone. It is unclear whether Congress will advance legislation this year pertaining to transparency in shell company formation. However, even if the U.S. waits until next year to pass legislation forcing the identification of beneficial owners behind companies set up in the U.S., Thursday's letter has already received praise from pro-transparency advocates. Well, good. The letter isn't the only bit of good news on the anti-kleptocratic front this week, after new research showed how effective the Treasury Department's geographic targeting orders, which force transparency on luxury real estate purchases in certain jurisdictions, had been over the past 2 years. Senator Marco Rubio this week proposed a study about rolling out the transparency regime nationwide. Ron Wyden and Sheldon Whitehouse joined Rubio in supporting a nationwide expansion of the policy, which would extend to any real estate purchase over $300,000. Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, is an article out of Think Progress as well. This time by Ian Millhiser, who says that Trump's attempts to sabotage pro-immigrant cities are at war with some of conservatives' favorite legal doctrines. Yes, they are, but only when it serves their purpose. When it doesn't, everything changes. We know how that works. The amusing thing about San Francisco v. Trump, a federal appeals court decision that just struck down Trump's effort to punish so-called sanctuary cities, is that Trump's own Justice Department did not even attempt to defend the executive order at issue in the case. Much of Chief Judge Sidney Thomas's opinion for the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit, which was handed down on Wednesday, rejects the Justice Department's argument that Trump's sweeping attack on pro-immigrant cities does not actually do what Trump says that it does. The Justice Department appears to have recognized that the executive order Trump actually signed is legally indefensible. He doesn't care. He's a mobster. He makes up the rules as he goes along. Okay, let's get back to governance here. It is not hard to guess why. Trump spent his presidency at war with the Constitution, but he's most often at war with the parts of the Constitution that liberals admire. In retrospect, the doomed lawsuits challenging Trump's Muslim ban never stood much of a chance in the Supreme Court. Sure, the ban is unconstitutional, almost comically so, but Chief Justice Roberts and Justice Alito were both chosen by George W. Bush because they were likely to uphold Bush's own efforts to violate the Constitution in the name of national security. Neil Gorsuch was a Bush administration lawyer who defended Bush's detention of suspected terrorists at Guantanamo Bay. Justice Clarence Thomas is, well, Clarence Thomas. Looking back on it, the only realistic chance of finding a fifth vote to strike down the Muslim ban rested with retired Justice Anthony Kennedy. And Kennedy spent the final term on the court in a kind of senior slump, passively acquiescing in the decisions of his more conservative colleagues. But San Francisco is a very different case than Hawaii. The problem with Trump's attack on so-called sanctuary cities is that it violates parts of the Constitution conservatives admire. Indeed, one of the seminal cases standing in Trump's way was authored by Federalist Society saint Antonin Scalia. The federal government employs surprisingly few law enforcement officers. Its preeminent law enforcement agency, the FBI, employed just over 13,000 agents in 2016, less than half the number of uniformed officers employed solely by the New York Police Department. ICE had about 12,000 agents in 2016, and the Customs and Border Protection added just under 20,000. That's it. In a nation of over 325 million people. The result is that, even with maximal effort, the federal government can only remove a fraction of the undocumented immigrants living in the U.S. The Obama administration estimated that out of the approximately 11.3 million undocumented aliens in the country, Congress only appropriated enough resources to remove fewer than 400,000 such aliens each year. But what if Trump could tap into over 1 million officers employed by state and local police forces throughout the country? If he could conscript these officers into a war on immigrants, Trump would have an army at his disposal, poised to round up countless undocumented immigrants and potentially harass the remainder out of the country. But there's a reason Trump cannot simply do this. The anti-commandeering doctrine, which provides that the federal government cannot order state and local governments to enforce federal laws. As Scalia wrote in Prince v. United States, quote, "The federal government may neither issue directives requiring the states to address particular problems nor command the state's officers or those of their political subdivisions to administer or enforce a federal regulatory program." The phrase sanctuary city is a pejorative term that describes pro-immigrant cities that take advantage of Scalia's decision in Prince. Sanctuary jurisdictions, in effect, tell the federal government that if it wants to round up undocumented immigrants within that jurisdiction, it will have to do so by itself. Local police cannot prevent ICE agents from rounding up immigrant families, but the local government can order those police not to assist in the roundups. All right. Unable to order state and local police forces to do his bidding, Trump's executive order takes a more indirect approach. It provides that the Attorney General and the Secretary of Homeland Security, hi there, lady, to the extent consistent with law, shall ensure that jurisdictions that willfully refuse to comply with these jurisdictions are not eligible to receive federal grants except as deemed necessary for law enforcement purposes by the Attorney General or the Secretary. If Trump can't order so-called sanctuary jurisdictions to do his bidding, he will starve them for funds until they cry uncle. But the thrust of Judge Thomas's San Francisco opinion is that Trump cannot do this either. If it were to enforce the executive order, Thomas writes, the executive would assert a power that belongs solely to Congress. You know, Congress holds the purse strings, not the executive. Well, Millhiser goes on and sums up, so the litigants challenging Trump's sanctuary cities policy have good reason for optimism that they will prevail in the Supreme Court, even if Kavanaugh is confirmed and the court takes a hard turn right. As a practical matter, the problem with Trump's executive order isn't that it violates the Constitution. The Muslim ban decision shows the Roberts Court won't let something as silly as the Bill of Rights interfere with Trump's policies. The problem with Trump's order is that it is at odds with the parts of the Constitution that justices like Roberts, Scalia, and Alito like. Well, we know how fluid that sort of understanding is. We'll see how it works out. We better get to our break, and we better. It's just moving on today. We'll come back, of course, and go through weather from around the world, and then we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. We will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, Leaves More Than a Trace. Taking its name from the outdoor conservation movement, the new film from Winter's Bone director Deborah Granick, Leaves No Trace, is several kinds of movie. It's a father-daughter love story. It's a piece on homelessness, one about PTSD-affected veterans, and it's a coming-of-age story. As the movie opens, we meet Will and daughter, Ben Foster and New Zealand newcomer Thomasin McKenzie, in and around their camp in the woods near Portland, Oregon. It's soon clear that they're not campers or weekend survivalists. They live there. Later in the film, when a social worker tells Tom that Will was required to provide a home for her, she answers without hesitation, he did. The two come to town only for Will to pick up supplies, which they pay for with the proceeds from him selling meds he's gotten from the VA. Their biggest fear is discovery, for which they even hold drills. Despite that, though, they are eventually discovered, briefly separated, and then placed in a modest dwelling on a Christmas tree farm where Will works to pay the rent. While Tom's socialization proceeds, Will is tormented by it, and eventually takes Tom and heads back out on the road to Washington State, where he's seriously injured but then nursed back to health by the inhabitants of a curious backwoods RV community. It's here, before the inevitable, if not totally conclusive conclusion, that Tom tells her dad, the same thing that's wrong with you isn't wrong with me. Granick is telling an understated but powerful story here, with every sidebar and every frame, especially the long close-ups on Foster's and Mackenzie's faces, advancing the narrative for its ambience. Oscar will remember this one, avoid the post-nomination lines, and catch Leaves No Trace now. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at Take2MovieReview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. People speak thousands of languages in the world today, and same goes for the bird world.
Each bird species has effectively its own language.
Andy Radford, professor of behavioral ecology at the University of Bristol.
And there might be similarities between some languages, just as there are in the human world, and then there are other languages that sound extremely different, even though they're conveying exactly the same meaning.
In fact, some birds are known to pick up on the language of other species. In particular, they've learned to detect danger by eavesdropping on the alarm calls of other birds. Radford and his colleagues wanted to investigate how that learning occurs, so they first played an alarm call that fairy wrens, an Australian bird, shouldn't be familiar with, a computer-generated alarm call meant to mimic a bird's. As expected, the unfamiliar sound had no effect on the fairy wrens. But then the researchers paired the synthetic call with a chorus of alarm calls the wrens would recognize. And after the training, the sound of the initially unfamiliar synthetic call alone was enough to send the birds ducking for cover. The results are in the journal Current Biology. Radford says the study shows birds can learn from their peers without ever seeing them, or a predator either.
And so I think that's the coolest thing of all, is that you can learn with your eyes shut about something really important in the natural world.
Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
This is 60 Second Civics from the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. The preamble to the U.S. Constitution says that one of the Constitution's purposes is to establish justice. But what is meant by justice? Justice refers generally to fairness. The meaning of justice has been contested for more than 2,000 years of human history and remains contested today. The concept of justice has long been divided into three types: distributive justice, procedural justice, and corrective justice. Distributive justice refers to the fairness of the distribution of benefits and burdens among persons or groups in society. Benefits may be such things as pay for work or the right to speak or vote. They may include almost anything that can be distributed among a group of people that would be considered useful or desirable, such as praise, awards, opportunities for education, jobs, membership in organizations, or money. Burdens may include obligations, such as homework or chores, working to earn money, paying taxes, serving on juries, or caring for another person. They may include almost anything that can be distributed among a group of people that would be considered undesirable, such as blame or punishment for wrongdoing. Issues and controversies over the fair distribution of benefits and burdens in society are very common and often highly contested, such as debates over healthcare benefits and taxes. That's all for today's podcast, 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
You can help stop the Trump agenda in its tracks. Make sure you're registered to vote. Go to rockthevote.org. And on November 6th, vote for Democrats up and down the ticket. This message, a public service from all the fine people of netrootsradio.com.
This is Solidarity News on Radio Labour.
I'm Mark Belanger. For the first time, member states of the United Nations have agreed on a framework for the global governance of migration. The breakthrough came in July when the states endorsed the Global Compact for Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration. To understand the effects the new compact will have, I talked to Jin-Suk Lee. Ms. Lee is the Migration, Gender, and Campaigns Director for the Building and Woodworkers Global Union. The BWI represents 12 million members in more than 330 unions around the world. I asked Ms. Lee to describe the situation concerning migrants.
According to statistics of 2017, there are approximately 258 million international migrants. This is an increase of 85 million since the year 2000. And just to add a little bit more full picture, the median age is about 39, and at least 48% of the international migrants are women, and you're talking about at least 15% that are under 20 years of age. Another fact that's important for people to note when you are just looking at the discourse around international migrants is that at least 70% of international migrants are migrating for the purpose of search of decent work.
What are some of the problems faced by these millions of migrants?
There are a number of challenges that international migrants face. One is, of course, the issue of decent work. 2 is the issue of low wages. 3 is the issue around recruitment. Many have to pay high recruitment fees, even though under the law in certain countries of both origin and destination, it is against the law to pay for work, but they end up paying high recruitment fees to either brokers or recruiting agencies, and therefore when they land in the country of destination, they're in debt. There's also issues around workers' safety, and the living accommodations of workers in many countries are very poor. And then, of course, the inability for many migrants to access social benefits. And for what's important for trade unions is that in some countries, migrant workers are not allowed to join trade unions. This is not only the issue of freedom of association, but the issue of collective bargaining rights.
Tell us about the Global Compact, which was endorsed by the UN member states. What does it do?
The Global Compact is an agreement where member states, the UN member states, agreed to address the issue of migrations amongst each other. And it's very historic because it's one of the most recent steps. UN member states have discussed and negotiated a compact, which is also, by the way, non-binding, but a non-binding compact that looks at the various issues of migration. It looks at the issue of recruitment. It looks at the issue of integration. It looks at the issue of how to address the services and rights of migrants in both countries of origin and destination.
Were labor unions involved in the negotiations which led to the Compact on Migration?
Trade unions, particularly under the frame of the Council of Global Unions Working Group on Migration, we were very active, along with a number of civil society groups, to advocate for key issues pertaining to a rights-based governance on labor migrations throughout the negotiations. So we were there at every set of negotiations that took place in New York. We were there at the regional consultations that took place at the various regions. We were there at some of the national consultations. So the trade unions were very much in the heart of the discussions. At the same time, I think it's also very important to point out that a number of trade unions also advocated very strongly with their national governments.
And that's it. International labor news you can use. You can find more labor news on our website at www.radiolabor.net. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's all about global solidarity.
From UN headquarters in New York, I'm Luke Vargas with your World in 2 minutes. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is in Malaysia this week for meetings with the country's new Prime Minister, Mahathir Mohamad. U.S. officials say one item atop the agenda is foreign investment. Before Mohamad won election this year, his predecessor signed off on billions in Chinese infrastructure projects, including a new Chinese-built railway.
He campaigned on a pledge to push back against so much Chinese investment in Malaysia.
Will Doig is a journalist and author of High Speed Empire, Chinese Expansion and the Future of Southeast Asia.
He felt that the previous administration had accepted way too much Chinese influence and Chinese influx.
Pompeo has echoed those concerns, warning countries against taking Chinese loans that seem too good to be true and could hand China valuable property if countries can't pay their bills. Mohamad is now reviewing Chinese infrastructure projects in Malaysia, saying he's wary about China sourcing its own labor and leaving behind little for Malaysia other than the infrastructure itself. As China pursues its One Belt, One Road trade and infrastructure initiative across Asia and Africa, those terms typically don't draw much scrutiny.
These are projects that are built by Chinese companies, and most of those Chinese companies are backed by the government in Beijing, which allows them to build things very cheaply because they're heavily subsidized at home.
Enter the United States, which officials say wants to present an alternative vision of transparent foreign investment. Despite some talk of the U.S. joining other Asian democracies in major infrastructure spending, that's an unlikely proposition.
We're in that awkward middle where we don't build really cheap like China does, but we also don't build, for instance, high-speed rail. more plausible is for countries like the U.S. to work with the governments to bolster, say, their civil societies or their independent press, so that those countries can then use those institutions to make sure they're getting a fair deal from China.
Luke Vargas, The United Nations.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all night hawks in the diner of life. This is probably, you could say, the speakeasy part, because even though I have the French 77s out there, I've got even better ones for you back here. How are they better? Well, they're at the chef's table. That's why. Very intimate now, isn't it? All right, we are experiencing a cooling trend. I can't believe it. This actually happened. Maybe we're on our slide to fall. You never know. We are slated to be only in the mid to upper 80s today. Only. Isn't that great? Yeah, it does feel cool. Right now, it's about 61 degrees. Winds are out of the west-southwest. I believe only about 2 miles an hour, if that. Okay, yeah, still only 1 mile per hour. We're going to have, like I said, a high of 87, but that could be, I don't know, 88? We'll see. If they say 87, that means 91. Darn it. I want mid to upper 80s. Okay, we'll keep it mid to upper 80s just for now. It'll be partly cloudy today, which is one of the reasons the temperatures will be down a bit. The winds will pick up as they usually do in about an hour to two, and they'll be out of the northwest at that time. Shifting later this evening at the same clip, but out of the north-northwest. Dry conditions will continue. We had a 20% chance of rain overnight. Did not happen. Grass pollen is at moderate. The air quality index, now this is key. It is now in the good part, not necessarily healthy, but good at 37 parts per million. The region is still in an active air quality alert, but we are experiencing great weather right now, and we're going to take advantage of it. And at least air, good air. But I anticipate it going up maybe a bit later on today. We'll see. Daytime UV index remains very high at 8, but it is down that notch because of some of the cloud cover. High pressure does obviously dominate the region, and it is steady right now at 30.02 inches. Visibility is down to 5 miles because it's a little foggy up there. And humidity is at 74%. So there you go. That's why there's so much mist up in the sky. Okay, weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 89 degrees and sunny. Paris is 94 degrees and sunny with a heat advisory. They're having terrible heat. You know, they had elderly people die by the scores last year and the year before in Paris because they couldn't get out of town. Usually people go to the coast or to the Alps. Get to the Alps. So actually all of Europe and almost all the way to Asia is experiencing this unreasonable high temperatures. So 94 and sunny with a heat advisory means they're going to get hotter. Rome is 77 degrees with a rain shower. They are under not an active thunderstorm watch that could knock out critical infrastructure. Kiev is 84 and fair. Kabul is 87 and fair. Hong Kong is 79 and partly cloudy. Hong Kong is 83 and partly cloudy with their own heat advisory that could knock out critical infrastructure or kill people who are not used to that kind of heat. Sydney, Australia is 60 degrees and fair. San Francisco, California is 53 and partly cloudy with a air advisory because of all the forest fires burning around their area. New York is 80 degrees and mostly cloudy. And New Orleans, I got to get New Orleans up here. One moment here, is 84 degrees Fahrenheit. Nearly the same temperature as yesterday. They have a 60% chance of precipitation, though it looks like maybe downtown is raining right now. Well, yeah, a high of 87. Winds are out of the east-southeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour with scattered thunderstorms. Isolated thunderstorms tonight for Netroots Nation 18. Low of 76 degrees with winds out of the southeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Though the air quality index will be good at 50. Hopefully you're not allergic to ragweed pollen. And those thunderstorms are possible about 12:30 your time. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. Christopher from Share Blue Media brings us this first offering here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, by the way. All right. Putin's serial humiliation of Trump reared its ugly head again yesterday when a pair of top national security officials demonstrated their lack of knowledge about what occurred at the summit between the two leaders last month. The White House held a press briefing on 2018 election security that was conducted by Sarah Huckabee Sanders and 5 high-ranking officials, including Trump National Security Advisor John Bolton and Director of National Intelligence Dan Coats. And who wasn't there? Yeah, Don Trump. Interesting. Reuters correspondent Jeff Mason asked both Coats and Bolton to explain why Trump did not discuss Russian malign activity at the Helsinki summit. Director Coats, who is in charge of the United States' entire intelligence community, replied that, "I'm not in a position to either understand fully or talk about what happened in Helsinki." Well, of course not. You're part of the deep state, buddy, the enemy. Coats referred to the question to Bolton, who told reporters that President Putin said, "I thought at the press conference," but certainly in the expanded bilateral meeting when the two leaders got together with their senior advisors, President Putin said the first issue that President Trump raised was election meddling. President Trump and President Putin. President Putin said it. That's why. The reason that Coats knew nothing about the summit and Bolton was forced to take Putin's word for it, that Trump said something about election meddling, is that Trump insisted on meeting alone with Putin. But at the joint press conference that Bolton referenced, Putin did not say that election meddling was the first issue Trump raised. Instead, Putin derisively told reporters that Trump mentioned the issue of so-called interference, and then he repeated his denials. Trump then responded, by telling the world that he believed Putin's denial was over his own intelligence community and Director of National Intelligence Dan Coats specifically, because Coats is part of the deep state. Since that summit, the secret meeting has continued to be an embarrassment for American officials who were left in the dark when Russia announced unspecified agreements it had made with Trump, and for Republicans who have blocked efforts to learn what actually happened between Trump and the Russian dictator. Thursday's briefing was obviously intended as a show of force to bolster confidence in the security of the 2018 midterm elections, but all Coats and Bolton succeeded in doing is reminding Americans how much closer Trump is to Putin than his own people. Well, his own people actually are ready to throw away democracy, and if not move to Russia specifically, let Russia move here.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Andrew Coates, professor of physics and deputy director of solar systems at the Mullard Space Science Laboratory, brings us this next article here out of the conversation, which is out of Australia, by the way. Now, apologies to Elon Musk, okay? I never thought it was going to happen, but nice try. SpaceX and Tesla founder Elon Musk has a vision for colonizing Mars based on a big rocket, nuke explosions, and an infrastructure to transport millions of people there. This was seen as highly ambitious, but technically challenging in several ways. Planetary protection rules and the difficulties of terraforming and dealing with harsh radiation were quoted as severe obstacles. Undeterred, Musk took his first step towards his aim in February of this year with the launch of a Tesla Roadster car into an orbit traveling beyond Mars on the first Falcon Heavy rocket. This dramatically illustrated the increasing launch capability for future missions made available by partnerships between commercial and government agencies. But 6 months later, the plans have started to look more like fantasy. We have since learned that there could be life beneath Mars' surface and that it may be impossible to terraform its surface. The possibility that there currently could be life on the red planet was raised last week, which was reported here, by the way, with the reported discovery of a saltwater lake beneath Mars' surface. This is exciting as it is the first definitive detection of liquid water on Mars, and it is possible that there may be further deep lakes elsewhere on the planet. This means there is the real possibility of current life on Mars, which part of the planetary rules, you don't go where there's life because it's already there. So now we know Mars lost its magnetic field, so they're going to be, totally stripped by the solar wind. All that plasma from the sun just stripped away their atmosphere how many millions of years ago. And it's not coming back. Okay, you actually need a magnetic field to be able to accomplish that. And I don't know, that's usually by luck. You don't have an iron core? Good luck. You're not a big giant gas planet with so much pressure and all that. Well, it's not going to support the kind of life we know anyway. Good luck. So I guess maybe we should try to put some efforts in expanding the life of our own planet until we can find one that is more conducive to our life and one in which we're not altering the life that's already there too much. All right, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and the week. We'll be back on Monday for River City Hash Mondays. But stay tuned to Netroots Radio throughout the weekend, and do check out our Facebook page for live streaming of Netroots Nation 18. Kelly Lincoln is there doing the good work. And so stay tuned for all of that throughout the day and the weekend, and we will visit with you on Monday in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, de mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.